Here is your warm-up for today. You should have pencils down and grading it at this point. Evaluating the discriminant was one of the things we tested on the last test. Once we evaluate it to determine the number of real solutions. The first thing is to make sure that one side is equal to 0. It's always important. So number 1 is, so we're going to label our A, B, and C. The discriminant is, remember, the part inside the radical for your square root of the quadratic formula. So we're talking about the square root, the b squared minus 4ac part. So b here is -1, so it'd be -1 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c. Well, when we square the -1, it becomes a +1. Minus 24, which gives us -23. So now the question is, can I take the square root of a negative? The answer to that is no, which means this has no real solutions. Moving over to number 2. This time, one side does not equal 0. We generally want to make the x squared positive, so we're going to move that over to the left, and since it's a -6x squared, we're going to add 6x squared. So we have 6x squared plus 3x plus 6 is now equal to 0. Now that one side is equal to 0, we can label our A, B, and C. So again, the discriminant is your b squared minus 4ac. So we have 3 squared minus 4 times a times c. So I have 9 minus 36 times 4, which is 144. 9 minus 144. At this point, to be honest, it really doesn't matter what that is because we know it's going to be a negative number. So this one, again, just like number 1, would have no real solutions. Today, to start chapter 3, we're going to work on adding, subtracting polynomials. This should pretty much be review, so it should be a nice easy day for you to practice and then do your homework. So when we add or subtract the following polynomials, we are of course looking for like terms. So if I look at number 1, well, first of all, there's a plus sign in between the parentheses. Remember, that is important. We covered that back in Module 2 when we talked about complex numbers. So since there's a plus sign, we're looking at 6x plus 3x, which will be 9x. And then we have the numbers 7, which is positive, plus a positive 8. So that makes plus 15. Number 2, this time, there is a negative in between, which means we're going to change it to the opposite and change everything else in that second parenthesis as well. So plus, which makes the 3x negative, and also the 9. So now when we combine our like terms, I've got 5x and a negative 3x, so that's going to make 2x. And then I have a negative 3 plus a negative 9, which will make negative 12. Last one we're going to do together, number 3. A little bit longer of a problem. So again, it's just a matter of looking for like terms. Remember, like terms is not just the same variable. That same variable also has to have the same exponent. So the first one I see, since we have the plus in between, is I have an x squared and a negative 2x squared. So that's going to make a negative 1x, or just negative x. Moving on, and if you'd like, you could then cross them out so you don't try to use them again. Now I have a negative 4x and a positive 7x. So that will make a positive 3x, 7 minus 4. And again, if you'd like, you could cross them out since you've completed them and you don't want to try to reuse them. And then our third term, which are just numbers, we can go ahead and put together. So I have a positive 5 and a negative 10, which will make negative 5. And I have to admit, back on my x, I forgot to put the squared there. So now that we've combined all of our like terms, this is our final answer. Here are 4 problems for you to try. Let's make sure you go ahead and write them down. Give them a try. Check with a neighbor or someone in front or beside you once you have your answers to see if you agree or disagree with them. And then unpause this when you're ready to check all 4 answers. You should be checking your 4 answers now, so they should all be done. On the first one, hopefully you noticed that it did start off with a minus between, which means we have to distribute a negative, so this becomes plus, that becomes the opposite, and so does that. Here our like terms were the 4x cubed and a positive x cubed, so there's 5x cubed. And I'm going to cross them out because we used them. Now I've run into a 6 next. There's no other numbers, so I'm just going to bring the plus 6 down. And then at the very end, I also have a negative 3x squared. This is why sometimes it helps if you cross it out, especially when we have ones that don't have something in common to put together. You don't want to miss any. And there is one way to write number 1. There are other ways to write this, as long as the 5x cubed is positive, the 6 is positive, 6 is positive, and the 3x squared is negative. At this moment, it doesn't matter the order. We'll talk about order tomorrow. Moving on to the next you try. Got a little bit bigger, but this time there is the plus sign between them, so we don't have to worry about distributing a negative. So the first term I run into is an x. I look throughout my problem for any other just x's. Remember, the exponents do have to match. And I have a negative x. Well, x and negative x are going to cancel out, so I'm going to cross them off again to make sure I remember I used them. Next, I run into a 4x cubed. So again, I look across for any other x cubes, and at the very end of the second parenthesis, it's like term. They're both positive, so that makes a 6x cubed. And then cross them out because we used them up. Moving along in the first parenthesis, there's still a negative 5 there. If I look at the second one, there's no number that's by itself, so that means I'm going to bring the minus 5 down. And I've got one last thing left that I haven't used yet, which is that positive 4x squared. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down as well. Double check one last time in your 3 terms just to make sure that none of them have the same variable and exponent. They don't, so this is our answer for the second one. Hopefully you're 2 for 2. Going to the next you try. Again, we have a negative here, so that means we're going to have to distribute that. And again, it only affects the second parenthesis, does not affect the first. Once we've distributed that, we can then look for like terms. So I start and I see my 6x squared first. So I look through, and there I run into the x squared on the second one. Well, 6x squared plus an x squared is going to make 7x squared. I used it, so I'm going to cross them out. So now I start with my 4x, looking for any other terms that also have just an x with them. and I run into now a negative 2x. Well, 4x and a negative 2x make a positive 2x. Cross them out because I used them up. I now see a negative 1. Looking across at what's left, again, another reason why it's helped to cross them out. I have another negative 1, so negative 1 plus negative 1 will make negative 2. Double check one last time that all of your variables and exponents are different so you can be sure that you're done. Last one to check our answers. This one again has a plus between them, so I don't need to worry about distributing negative. So we can start looking for like terms immediately. So I start with the 3x squared. I look through the whole thing, and there's a 2x squared. Since they're both positive, that's going to become a 5x squared. Cross them out because we used it up. Next term I run into is a 2x cubed. If I look at the entire rest of the problem, there are no other x cubes, which means this one comes all by itself. Crossed it out because I used it up. Now I run into a negative x. So looking at what's left that's not been crossed out, I have a positive 6x. Well, remember there's that invisible 1 with the negative x. So a negative 1 plus 6 will make a positive 5x. Cross them out. And then all that's left, you can even see, looking through it, again, this is why it's helpful to cross them out, is this positive 1 that's left. So I'm just going to attach it to the end. So I've got lots of x's, but this one's an x squared, this one's an x cubed, and this one's just an x. So since they're not like terms, there is my final answer. You can go ahead and start your homework with what time is left. Worksheet practice C. Make sure you do all those questions for tomorrow.